If anyone in the chat can hear me, just push 1. All right, I got a confirmation. Thank you for that confirmation. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 773, Black Politics. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust. Also, there'll be a link in the chat if you want to get on the panel and actually engage in this discussion. Just give me a second. Let me grab the link. All right, man. Let me kind of, explain what's going on here. So the last 72 hours, we've had a dilution of the integrity of the space in terms of the civil discourse. And an Anglo-Saxon person has come in and they have completely drained and liquidated the social capital of the space itself just by their appearance, and in addition to all of the Negroes who decided that they were going to grovel at the feet of this one Anglo-Saxon person. And so what I find interesting is that there were some statements made that I wanted to actually dissect and really go into, because I think that it's really important that this gets discussed, because you can't be in the space and say the things that was said and not be questioned about it. So let me actually share my screen. Just give me a second. Put this over here. Let me know if you can see the screen. Okay. All right, let me play this clip real quick. I'm not going to play the whole thing. I just want you all to hear what was said so that you have a fairly good understanding of what we're getting ourselves into here. Okay?
This as a native-born Black American who can trace his lineage back to before the Civil War, I can say that you may be on thin ice in this regard as well. Professor Glenn Loury, born in Chicago, a graduate of Northwestern University and MIT, one of the youngest tenured professors at Harvard University that's Black ever, holding forth now at Brown University, also is against reparations. Are you familiar with that, Jessica?
It doesn't matter, Obsidian. That's besides my point, whether Professor Brown is against reparations.
Professor Loury.
Professor Loury is entitled to his opinion, and Black people have different stances on the reparations. But again, it's something that you experience and it's part of what you know. It's external to Pearl. It's alien. And I get what you're saying in terms of me skating on thin ice. And I acknowledge that. I acknowledge that in my live stream yesterday. And I challenge you to find where I've given my stance on slavery and reparations. The furthest I go is that I think Black people deserve reparations. And I'm saying that as somebody that has Black in me, right? People are quick to disqualify the Black Brit experience or the Black Brit stance on slavery, but you have to remember a sizable amount of our population here is Caribbean, who are also descendants of slavery.
And I have no problem with the Caribbean case for reparations. I have nothing to say about it, as I'm not Caribbean and have not studied the matter to any degree. My only point in pointing out Professor Glenn Loury, number one, I've actually interviewed him on this channel, and we talked about the reparations issue, and he said on this channel why he was against reparations, and part of the reason was the same as Pearl. His position was, are we going to make whites, the vast majority of whom, by the way, got here after slavery ended, pay for those who did engage in it and others? So I'm just pointing out that Pearl is not unique along racial lines for taking an anti-reparations stance. That was my only point. Let me go to...
That's not the point of reparations, okay? That's not the point of reparations. You see, this is the sort of dilution of what I'm saying, of the diluting of the space. This sort of talking point is new to the space, okay? You didn't have people like this in 1.0, which is why I enumerated 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. Because prior to, this guy coming into the space, you didn't have people talking like that. There was no such thing as being against reparations or being against any sort of compensation for the wrongful doing of Black people or African slaves in this country. There's never been a case for that in this space until these guys got here. Now, here's the kicker, right? Anglo-Saxon woman claims she's a conservative. Glenn Loury claims he's a conservative. Obsidian claims he's a conservative. Do you see the correlation here? As long as they can get on the same page, talking point wise, then they agree with each other, even if what they're saying has no legitimacy. And this is why on this channel, I bang on conservatives, because this is the position that they take. The obstruction of justice, the obstruction of productivity, and the obstruction of progress. They're always front line and center at stopping anybody from advancing in society while standing on, they're standing on their soapbox talking about how much of a conservative they are. Okay. Conservatism in this space is about obstruction. That's it. It has nothing to do with advancing Black boys, advancing Black men, advancing society. They have no interest in that at all. It's always structured around stopping the progress of humanity for everyone else, and most explicitly for Black people. And you get a guy like this who says he can trace his lineage back before the Civil War, but doesn't agree with, sit on a panel with a person who says, they're against, the compensation for loss of land and labor, next to this Anglo-Saxon woman on the panel and a professor, Glenn Loury. It's absurd that people even follow these type of people. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on his channel. I want to make sure that I don't want to get caught in the algorithm. I don't want the brain trust being, blotted, with this stain of misinformation. That being said, what we see right here is from Congress, okay, HR 40. It's a commission to study and develop reparation proposals for African-American Act, okay? Representative Sheila Jackson Lee proposed this, okay? This is right after, this is during the pandemic, okay? Let me read it and let me zoom in so that everybody can see. Commission to study and develop reparations proposals for African Americans Act. The bill establishes the commission to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans. The commission shall examine slavery and discrimination in the colonies and the United States from 1619 to the present and recommend appropriate remedies. The commission shall identify, one, the role of the federal and state governments in supporting the institution of slavery. Two, forms of discrimination in the public and private sectors against freed slaves and their descendants. And three, lingering negative effects of slavery on living African-American society. So when you hear someone like her come on a panel and say, well, I don't know how they'll be able to go about doing it, the same way that they compensated the slave masters for their loss of property, which were the Black people who left the plantation. Okay. Now, old man says he could trace his lineage back before the Civil War. But if that was the case, why wouldn't you support reparations? And why would you have a person on the panel who doesn't support it? Because they're all conservative. Okay. See, this is what most folks don't understand, that you have to understand that these people will hide under the banner of conservatism, even if it works against the best interests of everybody in the community, even themselves, because they don't care. It's all about being a conservative. It has nothing to do with progress, productivity, advancement of other people, nothing. Okay? Glenn Loury says he doesn't think that the people of today should have to pay for the people of the past. But that's not what HR 40 is even about. Okay? Let me read it again. The commission shall identify, one, the role of the federal and state governments in supporting the institution of slavery. What white person, citizen-wise or civilian-wise, are they talking about? They're not talking about civilians. What role did the federal government and the states play in supporting the institution of slavery? Which role did they play? That's all it's asking. But you get guys like this who have live streams and these panels, and y'all let these guys off the hook. Why didn't somebody call him out on this? This was not hard to find. You can easily have, I found this in 30 seconds. Was not that hard. So like people were calling out this Anglo-Saxon person about her willingness to speak on things that, she had no idea or was not knowledgeable on. You get Black men in the space who are not even knowledgeable on this and supporting her. How can you claim to be Black manosphere and support her and support the talking points and defend her talking points while at the same time working against reparations? There's a term called class collaboration, okay? There are a lot of Black men in the space who work directly with Anglo-Saxon people against the best interests of Black people collectively, and then stand up here and say, it's a free market. I'm a capitalist. Yeah, you're a capitalist, all right. You're willing to exploit the conditions of Black people in order to make a profit and then turn back around and call yourself Black manosphere. Okay? And then call yourself a founding father of it. There's nothing in HR 40 that says anything about white Americans having to pay anything back to Black people, okay? Nothing. It specifically says the commission shall identify the role of the federal and state governments in supporting the institution of slavery, forms of discrimination in the public and private sectors against freed slaves and their descendants, and three, lingering negative effects of slavery on living African Americans in society. How can you argue against this? Much like she's ignorant, we expect that from her, but how do you explain Black men being so ignorant to align themselves with her? How does that make any sense? And yet people are giving this guy super chats, these other content. He's not the only one. There's a lot of other content creators that went live today too, and yesterday, and going live right now as we speak. They'll never show their face over here because they know they don't want this type of smoke. Oh man, she's never been in the manosphere, man. You know, y'all are just making up stuff. What are you talking about, man? I just watched like 12 different live streams in the last 24 hours of some of the most prominent vocal voices in this space who last week, this wasn't even a topic. Today or the last 24 hours, it's been a topic for them about this Anglo-Saxon person. These same people claim that they care about Black boys and Black boys reading on the 3rd grade level and the 4th grade level, and we're so concerned about Black boys. What are we going to do about our boys? But yet they got, you know, all the audacity in the world to get on their knees and give this Anglo-Saxon woman all the cunnilingus that she can desire. This is like a smorgasbord for her. Okay? It's a smorgasbord. Her name is in the mouth of all these Black male content creators. What you're witnessing here is digital cunnilingus. And these guys are able and willing to serve this person with all of her disgusting views about the Black community, man. How do y'all support this dude? How do y'all support these other content creators too, man? How do y'all support this? Links in the chat. I dare anybody to come up here and try to defend this. Now, that being said, you know, that's been debunked. This whole idea that white people have to pay for reparations out of their own pockets. This is just stupid talk. This is ignorance. Let's go to the other statement that was made. I'm not going to play any more of his content because I need a bath just listening to it. But what I will say here is he mentioned Nicole Hannah-Jones in the 1619 Project and how she's quote unquote unqualified. I could play that clip too, but I'm not going to play any more of his content. But let's just go to the 1619 Project because, you know, all these quote unquote Black male conservatives have a problem with Nicole Hannah-Jones in the 1619 Project and, you know, her perspective on, you know, Black history, okay? Actually, let me go back to, you know, HR 40, because HR 40 is actually very specific about this. It says right here in HR 40, the bill establishes the commission to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans. The commission shall examine slavery and discrimination in the colonies and the United States from 1619 to the present and recommend appropriate remedies. Okay, 1619, this is a very important year because that's what they're measuring. That's why you have a 1619 project, okay? Now, let me explode this out. This is the full issue of the New York Times. The New York Times magazine where the 1619 Project was posted initially when Nicole Hannah-Jones produced it over there, okay? Let me just read the paragraphs for you because there's a whole entire, there's 3 parts to this, but I'm not going to go through all of it. I'm just going to cover this one piece here because this is really the most important part. Because it's obvious that Obsidian didn't even read the 1619 Project, nor did he read HR 40. But you got a whole lot of brothers up in here supporting Obsidian and what he says, okay? It is not a year that most Americans know as a notable date in our country's history. Those who do are at most a tiny fraction of those who can tell you that 1776 is the year of our nation's birth. What if, however, we were to tell you that this fact, which is taught in our schools and unanimously celebrated every 4th of July, is wrong, and that the country's true birth date, the moment that its defining contradictions first came into the world, was in late August of 1619. Though the exact date has been lost to history, it has come to be observed on August 20th. That was when a ship arrived at Point Comfort in the British colony of Virginia, bearing a cargo of 20 to 30 enslaved Africans. Their arrival inaugurated a barbaric system of chattel slavery that would last for the next 250 years. This is sometimes referred to as the country's original sin, but it is more than that. It is the country's very origin. Out of slavery and the anti-Black racism it required grew nearly everything that has truly made America exceptional. Its economic might, its industrial power, its electoral system, diet, and popular music, the inequities of its public health and education, its astonishing penchant for violence, its income inequality, the example it sets for the world as a land of freedom and equality, its slang, its legal system, and the endemic racial fears and hatreds that continue to plague it to this day. The seeds of all of that were planted long before our official birthday in 1776, when the men known as the founders formally declared independence from Britain. Isn't that interesting? You know, the same guys who claim to be the founding fathers of the space also align their views with the founding fathers of America. The goal of the 1619 Project, a major initiative from the New York Times that this issue of the magazine inaugurates, is to reframe American history by considering what it would mean to regard 1619 as our nation's birth year. Doing so requires us to place the consequences of slavery and the contributions of Black Americans at the very center of the story we tell ourselves about who we are as a country. Perhaps you need some persuading. The issue contains essays on different aspects of contemporary American life, from mass incarceration to rush hour traffic, that have their roots in slavery and its aftermath. Each essay takes up a modern phenomenon familiar to all and reveals its history. The first, by staff writer Nicole Hannah-Jones, from whose mind this project sprang, provides the intellectual framework for the project and can be read as an introduction. Alongside the essays, you will find 17 literary works that bring to life key moments in African-American history. These works are all original compositions by contemporary Black writers who were asked to choose events on a timeline of the past 400 years. The poetry and fiction they created is arranged chronologically throughout the issue. And each work is introduced by the history of which the author is responding. A word of warning, there is gruesome material in these pages, material that readers will find disturbing. That is, unfortunately, as it must be. American history cannot be told truthfully without a clear vision of how inhumane and immoral the treatment of Black Americans has been. By acknowledging this shameful history, by trying hard to understand its powerful influence on the present, perhaps we can prepare ourselves for a more just future. That is the hope of this project. So, old buddy over there didn't even bother reading this, okay? Didn't even bother reading it. And this is free. You can download this from anywhere. In fact, I'll put it in the chat room too. Okay. Where are all the guys who supported Buddy over there with his talking points? And put HR 40 in there as well. Where is everybody? All these people who jumped up on the panel supporting this Anglo-Saxon person, where are they at now? Nowhere to be found, right? Let me drop the link in the chat again. All these folks who ran right up there, you know, last night and the night before and all these other places, and even today, you had certain, you know, quote unquote 2.0 founders, you know, who started this space from nothing, was up there defending this person. So Obsidian questioned the legitimacy of the 1619 project on his panel, okay? I could play, I'm not gonna play any more of his content. You can, if you wanna listen to it, go to the hour mark. I think it's around that 58-minute mark or hour, right around the hour mark. It's right around there, he starts talking about, you know, the lack of credibility of the 1619 project. And then questions, you know, and then uses Glenn Loury as a coward, you know, to rationalize not supporting, you know, reparations. You know, there's some people who don't support reparations. Who are those people? Who? Who are those people? Right? I mean, we had Triv 211 said he didn't watch any of it. He was asleep. I mean, we have to watch it because we have to make sure that we're doing fact checks. Okay, this is a fact check. Because if I didn't listen to it, I wouldn't know that he was saying all this foolishness. Okay. A person who said they could trace their history back before the Civil War is aligns himself with people who are against reparations. Who knew? How do you explain that? I mean, the term obsidian means black. I mean, it makes sense. You know, he's black in name and face only, but people in this space support him. And they support these ideas that run incongruent with the Black manosphere. Links in the chat. Mr. Lucky. Didn't even bother to read the 1619 project, and it's not that long. Let me see. 1619 project is 100 pages, okay? It's 100 pages. We're not talking about an 800-page book of like Quigley or something like that, Tragedy and Hope. We're talking about a 100-page article. And it's not even 100 pages, you know, that you have to read. It's only about 50 pages. I think half of the pages is just you know, pictures and stuff. Right? But this is what, you know, this is what the space has dissolved into. This is what the space has dissolved into. But that's like the basis of conservatism. not having to do your research, not having to be educated, not having to advocate for progress for Black people or anybody else. How is this possible? This dude had 3,000 plus people over there. Not one person called him out on this. And he didn't just say it once, he said it multiple times. I'll play it again.
It's not your situation. It's not something you can experience or empathize with. You're so far removed, and I don't think that you see that. And that's why it doesn't make sense for you to speak on these situations, because you're so removed from it. Your stance is unsympathetic, it's out of touch, and it's not something that you need to be speaking on publicly. So I'll say that about that.
Pearl, your response, and I would like to respond too, but first, you first. Go ahead.
No, I understand where you're coming from. Yeah, I agree. I shouldn't really talk about that stuff. So,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
yeah.
It's much simpler left that way.
Well, I would say this, Jessica. I accept your premise that Pearl is not qualified to discuss this. As a native-born Black American who can trace his lineage back to before the Civil War, I can say that you may be on thin ice on this in this regard as well. Professor Glenn Lowry.
No, you're on thin ice, buddy. You're on thin ice. Okay. I mean, you can critique Jessica X, but you can't critique, everybody. You got to critique yourself first. You're on thin ice.
Born in Chicago, a graduate of Northwestern University and MIT, one of the youngest tenured professors at Harvard University that's Black ever, holding forth now at Brown University, also is against reparations. Are you familiar with that, Jessica?
It doesn't matter, Obsidian. That's besides my point, whether Professor Brown is against reparations.
Professor Lowry.
Professor Lowry is entitled to his opinion, and Black people have different stances on the reparations. But again, it's something that you experience, and it's part of what you know. It's external to Pearl. It's alien. And I get what you're saying in terms of me skating on thin ice, and I acknowledge that. I acknowledged that in my live stream yesterday, and I challenge you to find where I've given my stance on slavery and reparations. The furthest I go is that I think Black people deserve reparations, and I'm saying that as somebody that has Black in me, right? People are quick to disqualify the Black Brit experience or the Black Brit stance on slavery, but you have to remember a sizable amount of our population here is Caribbean, who are also descendants of slavery.
And I have no problem with the Caribbean case for reparations. I have nothing to say about it, as I'm not Caribbean and have not studied the matter to any degree. My only point in pointing out,
it seems like you haven't studied many things based on your commentary here.
Professor Glenn Lowry, number one, I've actually interviewed him on this channel. And we talked about the reparations issue, and he said on this channel why he was against reparations. And part of the reason was the same as Pearl. His position was, are we going to make whites, the vast majority of whom, by the way, got here after slavery ended, pay for those who did engage in it and others? So I'm just pointing out that Pearl is not unique along racial lines for taking an anti-reparations stance. That was my only point. Let me go to.
But that wasn't even the premise of the discussion, right? That's not the premise of the discussion. So let's look at the track record for Buddy over here, Obsidian. He's had Jared Taylor on. He's had Anglo-Saxon women on. Calls himself a conservative. And has also had Professor Glenn Lowry on, okay? You don't see the correlation between all of these people that he's had on? All of these people that he's had on have essentially one bottom line: conservatism. Okay. What's going on, Mr. Lucky?
Am I mute still or no?
I can hear you.
Okay. So look, I never read the 1619 Project. I thought it was some BS that came up, you know, some of that woke crap, you know.
Woke crap? What do you mean by woke? What does that
You
mean?
know, like when everyone, it always seems like, oh, we just found some new history. Here's some new history for you. You know, some of that stuff.
That's your definition of woke?
No, that's not my definition of woke.
So why would you call it woke crap then? Because woke is a very specific term.
Yeah, what is the definition of woke?
I mean, you use it. I'm trying to understand what your definition is.
Let's see. I guess definition of woke would be this new feelings over fact, you know, stuff. I never even thought about that. What's the definition of woke?
I mean, so essentially, you don't have a definition for woke.
No, I don't have a definition of woke. It seems like it's something that continuously changes in my view. What's normal? I guess my definition of woke would be anything that wouldn't be considered normal 20 years ago. No.
Okay.
But I never even read the 1619 Project. What's that about anyway?
I just read it, man.
Hey,
I just read it.
would you mind summarizing it for me? I have not read it.
Let's read it together.
Sure.
Okay. Let's read it together.
Oh yeah, and I didn't come up here to like argue with you. It's just...
No, it's cool. It's cool because it's a learning experience for everybody who thinks like you, right?
Oh, okay.
It is not a year that most Americans know as a notable date in our country's history. Those who do are at most a tiny fraction of those who can tell you that 1776 is the year of our nation's birth. What if, however, we were to tell you that this fact, which is taught in our schools and unanimously celebrated every 4th of July, is wrong, and that the country's true birth date, the moment that its defining contradictions first came into the world, was in late August of 1619. Though the exact date has been lost to history, it has come to be observed on August 20th. That was when a ship arrived at Point Comfort in the British colony of Virginia, bearing a cargo of 20 to 30 enslaved Africans. Their arrival inaugurated a barbaric system of chattel slavery that would last for the next 250 years. This is sometimes referred to as the country's original sin, but it is more than that. It is the country's very origin. Out of slavery and the anti-Black racism it required, grew nearly everything that has truly made America exceptional. Its economic might, its industrial power, its electoral system, diet and popular music, the inequities of its public health and education, its astonishing penchant for violence, its income inequality, the example it sets for the world as a land of freedom and equality, its slang, its legal system, and the endemic racial fears and hatreds that continue to plague it to this day. The seeds of all of that were planted long before our official birth date in 1776, when the men known as our founders formally declared independence from Britain. The goal of the 1619 Project, a major initiative from the New York Times that this issue of the magazine inaugurates, is to reframe American history by considering what it would mean to what it would mean to regard 1619 as our nation's birth year. Doing so requires us to place the consequences of slavery and the contributions of Black Americans at the very center of the story we tell ourselves about who we are as a country. Perhaps you need some persuading. The issue contains essays on different aspects of contemporary American life, from mass incarceration to rush hour traffic, that have their roots in roots in slavery in its aftermath. Each essay takes up a modern phenomenon familiar to all and reveals its history. The first by staff writer Nicole Hannah-Jones, from whose mind this project sprang, provides the intellectual framework for the project and can be read as an introduction. Alongside the essays, you will find 17 literary works that bring to life key moments in African-American history. These works are all original compositions by contemporary Black writers who were asked to choose events on a timeline of the past 400 years. The poetry and fiction that created is they created is arranged chronologically throughout the issue, and each work is introduced by the history to which the author is responding. A word of warning: there is gruesome material in these pages, material that readers will find disturbing. That is, unfortunately, as it must be. American history cannot be told truthfully without a clear vision of how inhumane and immoral the treatment of Black Americans has been. By acknowledging this shameful history, by trying hard to understand its powerful influence on the present, perhaps we can prepare ourselves for a more just future. That is the hope of this project.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. So I came in when I clicked on. You were reading that last paragraph, a word of warning. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I got a couple. Okay. I got an angle on this. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So how come? So the 1619 Project that's where America actually started in 1619.
That's where the founding of, that's what's being claimed as the founding of where all this, carnage came from, not 1776.
Yeah, I mean, 1776 was when they declared independence.
Right.
So, I mean, that's when, yeah. So I don't get. Okay, well, I mean, okay, I'm gonna go out on a limb here, right? So stop me if I sound kind of crazy, right? But why wouldn't it be the 6 months before August when they actually rounded up some slaves and put them on the ship?
Because that's not where they landed.
Okay, but weren't there already people here in America where they were bringing the slaves to?
Say that one more time. I can't understand what you're saying.
Like, so they were like, hey, let's. Oh my God, I'm about to sound like an asshole. Whatever. Hey, let's round up all these dark people, put them on a ship, and just go across the water, and we don't know where we're going to land.
The very wealth that America was able to achieve was through the stolen labor and inhumane conditions that they put those Africans into when they landed here in 1619 is what the project is highlighting.
Oh, okay. Well,
and
yeah,
that you
that's
cannot,
true.
Right, America cannot be what it is without the exploitation and genocide that it committed during this time. What the 1776 Project tries to mask is all of that in order to rationalize its time, for independence and the birthday. right? The founding of the quote unquote United States. But in reality, what 1619 Project is trying to do is reframe all of that from a Black perspective.
Okay. All right. So look, weren't all think of every great empire. Now name one that they didn't use slave labor to build.
What do you mean?
Like was it Freeman that built the Wall of China?
I'm not following where you're going with this.
I don't know, man. It just doesn't seem like I don't get the point. Like yes, slavery was bad, yes.
So here's what I'll do for you.
Okay.
Does anybody in the chat room want to come onto the panel and help Mr. Lucky with his question on understanding the point of what we're talking about?
Yeah, that's because I don't get the point. I mean, if it's like, hey, here's a book about slavery was bad. It started in 1619 in America. I'm like, okay. So what's the hubbub, you know?
So let me play it again for you so that you have an understanding of what brought me to this discussion. Okay, I'm gonna play it again for you.
Talking about the video with Obsidian.
Oh, your response, I would like to respond to, but first, you first. Go ahead.
Forward.
I want to give Just Pearly Things a chance to discuss this. As a native-born Black,
because of the sins of white people's forefathers and ancestors, and that's what reparations is about. White people in America have had hundreds of years of head starts over Black people, whether they utilized it or not. They have had that opportunity where Black people haven't. So reparations is to make up for that. Because you're white, it's not your situation. It's not something you can experience or empathize with. You're so far removed, and I don't think that you see that. And that's why it doesn't make sense for you to speak on these situations, because you're so removed from it. Your stance is unsympathetic, it's out of touch, and it's not something that you need to be speaking on publicly. So I'll say that about that.
Pearl, your response, and I would like to respond too, but first, you first. Go ahead.
No, I understand where you're coming from. Yeah, I agree. I shouldn't really talk about that stuff. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's much simpler left that way.
Well, I would say this, Jessica. I accept your premise that Pearl is not qualified to discuss this. As a native-born Black American who can trace his lineage back to before the Civil War, I can say that you may be on thin ice in this regard as well. Professor Glenn Lowry, born in Chicago, a graduate of Northwestern University and MIT, one of the youngest tenured professors at Harvard University that's Black ever, holding forth now at Brown University, also is against reparations. Are you familiar with that, Jessica?
It doesn't matter, Obsidian. That's besides my point, whether Professor Brown is against reparations.
Professor Lowry.
Professor Lowry is entitled to his opinion, and Black people have different stances on the reparations. But again, it's something that you experience, and it's part of what you know. It's external to Pearl. It's alien. And I get what you're saying in terms of me skating on thin ice, and I acknowledge that. I acknowledged that in my live stream yesterday, and I challenge you to find where I give my stance on slavery and reparations. The furthest I go is that I think Black people deserve reparations, and I'm saying that as somebody that has Black in me, right? And people are quick to disqualify the Black Brit experience or the Black Brit stance on slavery, but you have to remember a sizable amount of our population here is Caribbean, who are also descendants of slavery.
And I have no problem with the Caribbean case for reparations. I have nothing to say about it, as I'm not Caribbean and have not studied the matter to any degree. My only point in pointing out Professor Glenn Lowry, number one, I've actually interviewed him on this channel and we talked about the reparations issue, and he said on this channel why he was against reparations, and part of the reason was the same as Pearl. His position was, are we going to make whites, the vast majority of whom, by the way, got here after slavery ended, pay for those who did engage in it and others? So I'm just pointing out that Pearl is not unique along racial lines for taking an anti-reparations stance. That was my only point. Let me go to
All right, so that's where we that's the grounding that we're working from for this panel.
Okay, so why did he explain a little bit more on why he said that the professors, why they didn't want to give reparations?
Because they didn't want white people, white civilians, paying for their ancestors' sins. It's essentially what they're saying.
Okay.
The purpose of the 1619 Project is to reframe American history through the Black lens. Okay, that's the whole purpose of it. Black people are kind of left out of that conversation, although they're the ones that were the most exploited for America's wealth. They're left out of the conversation. And so if we reframe American history through the lens of Blackness, through the lens of Africanness, then you start to have a different conversation about America's exceptionalism. Jay Shine, welcome to the panel. Perfect Blackness, welcome to the panel.
Good evening, brother.
Yes, sir.
How you doing? What's up, Perfect
Good, bro.
Blackness? What's up, Mr. Lucky?
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, so look, I want to just speak to that. I want to make 2 points.
Mm-hmm.
But first, I want to speak to Obsidian's point, and it's an idiotic one. America paid restitution to Japanese after internment in World War II. So by his logic, the immigrants that came after World War II there should be no reparations paid to the Japanese, because the immigrants, there were people who came to the country after World War II. This is a stupid argument. All right. This is an idiotic argument. Let's take the emotionality out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Slavery was business.
Yes.
All right. They built the wealth of the country on slavery. And by doing so, they created a wealth gap that you cannot work through. You cannot work your way to close the wealth gap between whites and blacks because of slavery. And Jim Crow, of course, as well, but mostly because of slavery. Your initial insurance companies were built during slavery. A lot of your tobacco companies and your sugar cane, all the cotton companies. Cotton was the oil of its in that generation. You know what oil? How much more oil makes now, right? That's what cotton was at that time. All right, they built what some people would say trillions of dollars in today's money during slavery, and it all went to white people. Now, white people have a class system, so of course, all white people did not benefit from, but the overall society in the country did. And that money was reinvested over and over again, making these people super rich and expanding the pie, but we never got our cut of the pie. That pie was built on the backs of your ancestors. This is not just a justice claim, this is a business claim.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened for 250 years. We were slaves longer in America than we've been free. America has been a slave country longer than it's been free. It's worse than is happened. How long was the Holocaust? What, less than a decade?
12
that
years.
went on? You know what I mean? We're talking about one of the greatest crimes in human history. And for a Black person to stand here today and be against reparations, it's one thing not to be actively for it, right? Like, I'm not going to go advocate for it. I'm not going to waste my time doing that. That's fine. But to be actively against it makes zero sense. It makes no sense. It's disrespecting your ancestors. We came from a place. We didn't just get here yesterday. And I'm going to tell you something else. There's no other group of people on the planet that will have this attitude.
Mm-hmm.
None.
You might have.
And there's no, and I don't want to hear that thing about, we can't, focus on that. If we focus on that, we can't enterprise. Dude, I'm one of the most successful people in this space. You understand me? And I'm going to tell you something else. Asians are one of some of the most successful people in the country. And they want their reparations. I promise you. If they owed something, they're going to go get it. In fact, Jews are some of the most successful people on the planet. And they still getting people hung and tried and getting reparations. France got to cough up money, and France and Poland are coughing up money right now for a new claim from World War II. Yeah. We're the only ones with this mentality. I know where it's coming from. A lot of it is stooped in self-hate. We've been programmed and socialized to not even care about ourselves, to not even care about our lineage. That's why we don't operate like other people. Other people come to this country, they come from a standpoint of operating from a pride from their lineage and who they are, no matter what L they took. You can go to third world countries around the world, where they've been completely dominated by a European country or dominated by an Asian country, and they still proud people. This is where this stems from. We are who we are. We didn't get here just yesterday. And I don't care if we're the most successful. I say like this. I don't care if we're the Asians of America. If Black people become the most successful people in America, what that means is the highest earning, like the Asians are, right? The highest earning people in America as a group. I still want my reparations. It's a justice claim. It's something that's owed to a group of people. You don't let somebody just get away with that. I go out here every day and I make a lot of money. I'm up right now, 3 o'clock in the morning in Germany. You know what I'm working on? I'm working on property shit back in the States.
Thanks.
I'm doing that right now. That's the reason why I'm up. And I still want my reparations. It has nothing to do with hard work. It has nothing to do with enterprising. It has nothing to do with corporate, goals, if we have any. This is about justice. This is about reality. This is about truth. You got the greatest country, the greatest economy on the planet that was built on the backs of your people, and you don't want your cut. You don't want what's due to you. You don't want restitution for the people who allowed you to be alive. I don't understand it. So this whole nonsense that they talk about on the so-called Black conservative, well, they're not conservatives. Because I'll tell you right now, no one complains more than white conservatives in America. No one has more grievance than them. If I was an alien and I came to America right now from another planet, I would think that white men were enslaved. The way they complain. Talking about they don't have no freedom and all this other nonsense. It's progressive. It's aggressive defensiveness. This is a mindset and an attitude that started the Civil War in the South. They had a position of called aggressive defensiveness, basically saying that they're victims of something that they are actually doing to people. You understand? That's what aggressive defensiveness is. So they act like they're the victims, but they're actually the perpetrators. And the truth of the matter is, they're the ones that run around the country right now trying to kill old laws to disenfranchise people. They have not changed. They are keeping the manifest destiny going. And all we do is argue with each other about what we should be doing, what we should be for. Every Black man and every Black woman should be for reparations. Everybody. Whether you actively advocate for it is one thing, but to say you against it makes zero sense. I'll leave it there.
Perfect Blackness.
Hey, what's going on, Mike, man? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me up. What's going on, Jay Sean, Mr. Lucky? Well, as you know, I'm always going to be for reparation. One of the things that I have a problem with, at least in terms of the people who have an argument against it, is when they say that that white people who have nothing to do with slavery shouldn't have to pay. And I have a fundamental difference with that because my first permanent duty station when I was in the Army was in Germany. And I'm going to say something I'm pretty sure that Jay Sean will probably back me up on. German citizens are still paying reparations to Israel, to the Jews. And if, say, me and Mike were to go and become German citizens, we would have to pay our money, our tax dollars that they would levy from us. Part of that will still go to paying reparations to the Jews, because no one asked us to come over there to become citizens of Germany. Anyone that come to the United States and become citizens, then they owe on that debt, because it was by way of Black American slaves who paved the way for any immigrant to come to this country. Any. Now, for me, this is an emotional, and I admit to that, this is an emotional issue for me, because not just through slavery, because I can trace, just like other people, I've literally traced my ancestry all the way back before the Civil War. Both sides of my family. Ancestry, that is good. That shit works. And I encourage all Black Americans to actually invest in that, because that right there, it works. Oh yes, it does. I found out stuff about my ancestry that even my grandhouse didn't even know.
You gave them your DNA?
Yes, but they also destroyed it too.
Okay.
Because you can request for them to destroy it, and I did that. I asked them for them to destroy it.
Okay, but I mean, like, haven't we requested reparations?
Say it again.
I said, haven't we requested reparations as well?
Well, that's what's on the screen right here, right?
Yeah, that's the HR 40. Yes,
right. You need a way to study and develop the reparations process, right? There was reparations at one point, and then that all came to an end, after Reconstruction. Okay, when the Gray Boys destroyed Reconstruction. The point that we're making here is that, and I'm not going to speak for Perfect Blackness, but the idea here is to push for what is just due. Now, him giving his DNA to whatever firm it was that does the genetic, ancestry.com or whatever it was, to find out his lineage, is immaterial to the reparations case.
And that was the reason for my pregnant pause, because I was trying to make the connection.
Yeah,
I was trying to make that connection because it's immaterial to my point.
Yeah,
the only issue, I'm not against HR 40. The only issue that I don't even have an issue with it, because for me, how many books have been written about slavery? How many, and about the profitability of it, and how American banks, insurance companies, all these how these institutions have built themselves on the backs of slavery.
Harvard.
Not only that, the actual legal precedence for giving Black Americans reparations is already there. So for me, I really don't know what so much is the need for the study. I understand the politics of it. Granted, I understand they need that. White folks need it to stymie it as much as they absolutely can. Fine. But for me, in my eyes, this is a foregone conclusion in terms of legality. There's no legal basis for them to deny Black Americans reparations. None.
Well, so let me read it again, because I know when you say that, there's a lot of people who may agree with you, but they don't even understand, what HR 40 is really about. And HR 40 is essentially saying the commission shall identify the role of the federal and the state governments in supporting the institution of slavery. Okay, that's the purpose of it. What role did Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, Kentucky, what role did these states play in the institution of slavery and disenfranchising of Black people? Also, in what role did the states play during Jim Crow in disenfranchising Black people in that Confederate South? That part has to be studied to a T, right? Because you wouldn't be able to identify who's who and what's what, and what role did the state play in it. And so from a data standpoint, the collection of data in forensics is going to be very important in order to make a just case for that. Because if that's the case, then what happens here is some person from Ghana can just show up, man, and park themselves in California and end up, getting the bag for something that, that doesn't even concern them. And so that's why that's important. Now, I know there's some people that's going to say that, white people, man, they were enslaved too, but that's not the purpose of HR 40, and I can care less.
And here's the thing I want to say real quick about that, Mike. This has to be lineage based,
exactly.
Just like they do
exactly.
for every other group.
Yep.
All right. And the thing is, I don't care what happened. I'm talking about what happened to us in America.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that tells me, that's one thing and I'll say his name, because Obsidian has always been on a problem before the Manosphere even developed. I remember going to his Blog Talk Radio channel before he even started a YouTube channel. That's how far I go back. Before I predate Obsidian. And one of the reasons I left him alone was because of this kind of nonsense, bringing on white supremacists on his channel and using and having their talking points. This is a lineage-based claim for a specific group of people where the American wealth was built off of. That's it. For him to say in that video you just played a minute ago, Mike, about the Caribbean claim, you know, all that, and I don't know nothing about that. So you're acknowledging that they have a claim and they're more power to them. But when it comes to your group, you're against it. And there's no reason for that. The only reason you will be against it because you want to align yourself with a group of people that you look up to. And let's just be honest, these Black conservatives are not really conservatives, because to be a conservative, like I said before, you have to be pro yourself. It's all conservatives on the planet are pro themselves first. That's what a conservative is. So what these guys are doing is sycophant behavior. And Mr. Lucky, I will behoove you to get away from that. I will ask you to look at your bloodline, look at your great-grandfather and his great-grandfather, and be about them, and stop worrying about, you know, being in alignment with some people you do not know, do not care about you, because these white conservatives do not give a damn about you. All they do is keep wealth to themselves.
I mean, all right, Jay Shine, look, okay, so I'm ex-military as well. You know what I'm saying? I was in Afghanistan a couple times. It's just
Army.
Yeah, oh yeah. And so like
I'm ex-Army as well. Who?
Yeah. And it's just like I don't really care. Like, to me, I've been skating around this whole race shit because like I'm out here on my own. You know, like I live in a place where I'm literally the only Black person around here in the next couple miles. Like, definitely. Right now I'm living in a small town in the middle of nowhere. You know what I mean? And I'm planning on just leaving the country because it looks a lot like Babylon to me. So I'm just gonna leave.
Well, I'll tell you this, Mr. Lucky.
What's up?
Everywhere is Babylon. You know, I was
yeah,
seeing guys with a video.
I'm worried about that.
Name, a famous YouTuber. He was out in Thailand calling America Babylon. I'm like, do you know what goes on in Thailand? You know what I mean? You know, do you know what goes on in Brazil? You know, look, the world is what you make it, Mr. Lucky. The world is what we make it. And the one thing I always say to people is, when you have power and you have agency, you create your own morality. You know, so I would say, don't give up, man. You know, fight for what's yours, stay for what's yours. But I mean, it teaches on.
Yeah, I don't know, man. This whole system here just seems like it's designed to put a whole lot more pressure on you than I should have to deal with, you know. So
you know, Mr. Lucky, so do you not or do you and forgive me if you have already answered this question, do you believe that Black Americans should or owed reparations?
Oh yeah, but I believe it was Jay Shine said, I'm not you know, about to go and petition and protest and stuff for it, because I don't think it'll happen. I think it'll happen when that CBDC shit comes out and they'll be like, oh, here's your reparations, by the way. Surprised you can't buy nothing with it, you know?
Well, I mean, there's already reparations taking place, though. You do know that.
You talking about in California, in the San Francisco area?
Not just California, but Illinois has worked out their own reparations commission for studying people who were disenfranchised during Jim Crow.
So people got money.
Yeah, they got their money.
Not really. Okay. Not really, but that's.
I'm saying those people who were warranted repair were in fact compensated. I'm saying those people were. Native Americans were compensated as well out in
oh yes they were.
Oklahoma.
Oh yes they were.
Yeah, right? You see how, but the result.
Natives got a whole slaughter of the damn country where they can just rule themselves.
Yeah.
Talk about reparations.
I know a few Indians, and I mean their situation doesn't seem too good. So
but that's
I
immaterial.
don't know, man.
That's immaterial. They still have an entire piece of the United States where at least the local state governments don't have jurisdiction.
Seems like
a
human zoo to me.
You can talk about their condition, but they still are getting paid currently.
Those casinos bring a lot of money.
They still have tax benefits because they are natives. They still get that. They have an easier time getting to school and other stuff than we do.
Yeah.
So and it's a fact. That's reparations. I mean, you can talk about their condition of life,
Mhm.
But that doesn't stop them from getting their monthly checks, and it doesn't. They're not cut off from their federal benefits.
And don't forget, they're not us.
Exactly.
Yeah,
We're a whole different group. We're a whole different species. Just
I
think
know.
about
And that,
everything that came out of Black America culturally, you know, and the inventions, everything we did just in the 1900s alone.
exactly.
We're a
That's the
different
purpose.
breed. So I don't really, it's not that I don't care about them, but they're not our problem. They're not our situation.
Exactly.
You know,
That's
They're
not
not
the
our problem.
conversation. That's
They're
not the
not our-
conversation.
yeah,
they're
what we
not
would do with resources would be different what they did with resources. That's not a good mark. I look at the lack of resources we had in the 1900s, and I see how much we did, how we built our own communities, we built our own banks, we built, you know what I mean? Even though they were burnt down, tore down,
They were
and
burnt
also
down.
schemed on, you know what I mean? But the thing is, we still kept moving and we keep recreating. That's who we are. But I'm telling you right now, the issue is we cannot close this goddamn wage gap, this wealth gap with
Yeah,
whites.
that's big
There has to be something done to close that gap. And I'm gonna give you an example. When you fly into BWI or any airport and you come in and you see those houses on the waterfronts and those lakes and you see the boats and all that kind of stuff. Do we live like that as Black people? You see what I'm saying? You can actually, when you actually zoom out and see how much shit white people have across the country, every city, how they live, the value of their homes. It's just, there's no way you can catch up to that, because as we gain, they gain. So there has to be something infused, something ingested. And we're the only people on the planet, it's not the planet, excuse me, the only people in the country that has this claim.
Mhm.
We're a special group. And what I see from a lot of brothers, and you know, not to pick on you, Mr. Lucky, but I do see this a lot because I'm around the military. I do see a lot of brothers that feel like they cut off and they're not a part of anything. And I don't know how we remedy that, but I do recognize it.
Can I ask Mr. Lucky this? Where are you from originally, Mr. Lucky?
Oh, I was born in Cali, Sacramento.
You was born in California. Okay, so what do you know about your grandparents, great grandparents, and how your family got to California?
I trace my lineage back to Oakland, and that's it.
So you don't know nothing past Oakland. So
No, unfortunately not.
and see, and that right there, that in and of itself shows that you should do you should go to some of these like ancestry.com to find out where your lineage, where you come from, because I can guarantee you that your bloodline ended up in California through the Great Migration. Somewhere along the line, somebody in your lineage, somebody in your family fled the South.
Oh no, look, I'm sure of it. It's just,
And the reason
I'm like hyper paranoid, man. I'm worried about giving anyone my DNA at this point.
well,
They already have your DNA. The government already has it.
They already have it. The thing
If you're
is,
in the military, they got your DNA.
exactly. He should know that. But the thing is,
But I'm not
This is
willingly giving
really
it out to
important to
everyone
me.
else.
this is really important to me, because especially this Great Migration piece, because I did a lot of tracing of my family. And I can tell you right now, had it not been for Jim Crow, South, and all of that, I would probably be a rich man twice over, 3 times over, because my family, both sides, were business owners, and we were
Same here.
denied generational wealth.
Mhm.
We had to come up through St. Louis, Mississippi, and Chicago. And every successful generation out there that we became poor. You're not going to alpha your way out of that.
Mm.
There is no amount of go get a job and a degree is going to get yourself out of that.
The fastest way to building wealth in this country is through home ownership. And Black people have largely been denied access.
During
Access.
the 1900s and the 20s,
Mhm.
Black Americans had to flee homes. Do you understand what that is? They had to flee homes and businesses
And
in
businesses,
droves.
right. Yep.
In droves.
Because of the terrorism. Yeah.
Do you understand what that is?
Well,
And they came up to be integrated into poverty, into redlining. They had no idea that they were going to be treated in the fashion that they did.
but that's why I was like, man, I'm just gonna leave. I'd rather start somewhere else brand new.
Then
Well,
you
Let me ask you a
should-
question,
let's
Mr. Lucky.
let's
Hold on,
talk
let me ask you a
about.
question real quick.
What's up?
Real quick question.
Mhm.
Mr. Lucky, you're a soldier, right?
Yes.
You signed up and you would have died for America, wouldn't you?
I mean, I took the oath. But I mean,
I'm
I
just
wasn't
saying,
gonna be
but that's
like,
the
hey,
position you
have your
put yourself
DNA.
in, right?
yeah, but yeah, that is the position I put myself in. Yes.
Okay, so my follow-up question is this: why are you not willing to fight for your bloodline?
Bro.
I mean, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just asking a simple question. I always want to ask brothers like you this question. If you was here man to man, I would ask you the same thing. Why are you not willing to fight for your bloodline?
I've got a little brother who's still in, and he's got 2 kids, right? I got an older brother who has a daughter, and she's in the wind. He knocked up some Hispanic chick and that she bounced. Like, I see my nephew and niece, and I'm like, man, you know, I want to do stuff for them because I don't have any kids. You know what I'm saying? I don't have any kids. I want to do for them, but my little brother, he's still in. He went ahead and took the shot, and so now I'm worried that, you know, all kinds of stuff's about to go down. And I'll fight for those little for my niece and nephew, but there ain't
Let
nothing.
me ask you
There
another
ain't nothing
question, Mr.
here.
Lucky.
There ain't nothing here that I want to fight for. You know.
Let me ask you another question real quick. I'm not sure if you've been stationed around the world, but you're in the military, right? So you know what America is, right?
Yeah.
So you know there's no running from this, right?
Hey, you know what? I'm like an accelerationist right about now, man. I can't wait for this shit to burn. I want it to go down.
Yeah, but if it goes down, we all go down. You know what's weird
Sure.
about some of our passport bros and our expats? They talk that like that, but if the dollar goes down, so do they. You know what I mean? So we got work to do. That's just it. I'm not waiting for it to fall apart. I'm not waiting for somebody to come save me. I'm not waiting for some other nation to take over. We have work to do. We have to take our own futures. And what I mean by our futures, the second what you just talked about, your nephews, your nieces, I have that too. I have a daughter. I got grandchildren come behind me. I have other responsibilities. I had enough fun. It's time to get to work. But we have to work together. I can't do it by myself, obviously. You know, we need to have a critical mass of Black people who just give a fuck. For one, let's start there. You know what I mean? And then start making the right decisions, voting the right way, and start voting our interests like other groups do. Because you know what? A lot of these immigrants, what we don't say about these immigrants that come into America is that they feel the same way you do. They fleeing bad situations and they coming halfway around the world and make their lives better for their children. Andrew Yang, father was a peanut farmer. Am I not mistaken, Mike V?
Yeah.
And look where he's at. He's out here running for president in the richest country in the world. See, these people got a different mentality, and we got to get off this defeated mentality shit and get back to being warriors and champions. I'm a warrior.
I with that because my wife, she's South African.
Yeah,
she's from South Africa, and they came from she come from very humble beginnings, and even right now, you know, where they, you know, parts of don't even have running water.
Still, well, you know, what's interesting about that is that you know, these boys in South Africa, you know, came to the United States, came to the Confederate South to study Jim Crow so they can implement it back on the continent.
Yep.
And you got people in this space aligning themselves with the same folk. Let me read this excerpt.
Hitler did the same thing. Hitler sent people over here to study how America dealt with the Black issue, and he started implementing the same thing with Jews in Germany. Yeah,
an apartheid system. Let me read this excerpt from Randall Robinson, who is now an ancestor. Barbara Robinson, rest in peace to him. He died Saturday or Friday morning. This is from his book, The Debt, What America Owes to Blacks. Okay. Thoughts about restitution. The world itself is stolen goods. All property is theft. And those who have stolen most of it makes the laws for the rest of us. Okay. The excerpt, open the excerpt here. Yeah, go to the next chapter. On January 5th, 1993, Congressman John Conyers, a Black Democrat from Detroit, introduced in Congress a bill to, quote, acknowledge the fundamental injustice, cruelty, brutality, and inhumanity of slavery in the United States and the 13 American colonies between 1619 and 1865. And to establish a commission to examine the institution of slavery, subsequent de jure and de facto racial and economic discrimination against African Americans, and the impact of these forces on living African Americans, to make recommendations to the Congress on appropriate remedies and for other purposes. The bill, which did not ask for reparations for the descendants of slaves, but merely a commission to study the effects of slavery, won from 435-member U.S. House of Representatives and only 28 co-sponsors, 18 of whom were Black. The measure was referred to the House Committee on increases here. On the Judiciary and from, let me mute. Mr. Lucky. The measure was referred to the House Committee on Judiciary and from the House of the Subcommittee on Civil and Constitutional Rights. The bill has never made it out of the committee. More than 20 years ago, Black activist James Foreman interrupted the Sunday morning worship service of the largely white Riverside Church in New York City and read a Black manifesto which called upon American churches and synagogues to pay up $500 million as a beginning of the reparations due to us as people who have been exploited and degraded, brutalized, killed, and persecuted. Foreman followed by promising to penalize poor response with disruptions of the church's program agency operations. Though Foreman's tactics were broadly criticized in the mainstream press, the issue of reparations itself elicited almost no thoughtful response. This had been the case by then for nearly a century, during which divergent strains of Black thought had offered a variety of reparation proposals. The American white community had turned a deaf ear almost uniformly. Gunnar Myrdal, a widely respected thinker, wrote of dividing up plantations into small parcels for sale to ex-slaves on long-term installment plans. He theorized that American society failure to secure ex-slaves with an agrarian economic base had led ultimately to an entrenched, segregated society, a racial caste system. But while Myrdal had seen white landowners being compensated for their land, he never once proposed recompense of any kind for the ex-slave he saw as in need of an economic base. In fact, in his book on the subject, An American Dilemma, Myrdal never once uses the words reparation, restitution, indemnity, or compensation. In the early 1970s, Boris Bittaker, a Yale Law School professor, wrote a book, The Case for Black Reparations, which made the argument that slavery, Jim Crow, and a general climate of race-based discrimination in America had combined to do a grievous social and economic injury to African Americans. He further argued that the sustained government-sponsored violations had rendered distinctions between de jure and de facto desegregation meaningless for all practical purposes. Damages, in his view, were indicated in the form of an allocation of resources to some program that could be crafted for Black reparations. The book evoked little in the way of scholarly response or follow-up. The slim volume was sent to me by an old friend who once worked for me at Trans-Africa, Ibrahim Gassama, now a law professor at the University of Oregon. I had called Ibrahim in Eugene to talk over the legal landscape for crafting arguments for a claim upon the federal and state governments for restitution or reparations to the derivative victims of slavery and the racial abuse that followed in its wake. I'm not going to read too much more into this, but it's a really good book. If you don't know who Randall Robinson is, he's very instrumental in taking down apartheid in South Africa, a more Pan-Africanist, and a very instrumental person in the the pro-Black movement, especially with his Trans-Africa Foundation and what he started in the mid-1970s. He passed away on Friday at 81. and played a significant role in the conversations that we're having today. And I'm surprised to hear somebody like Obsidian sit on a panel, call himself a conservative, use the name Obsidian as another term for Blackness, and then turn back around and align himself with this Anglo-Saxon woman, giving her cunnilingus on the panel with pure joy. Go ahead, Perfect Blackness.
Dude, you kill me every time you say that, man.
Say what?
That Anglo-Saxon woman giving her cunnilingus.
What else would you call it?
No, that's perfect. That's why I'm laughing. Every time I heard you yesterday say that, I was like, yeah, it's too much.
It's facts, though. I mean, I don't see how anybody can argue against it, because at the end of the day, that's what these guys, that's what I saw. You know, I've been in the manosphere since 2007, and I've seen my fair share of things go down, but I've never seen anything like what I saw this weekend.
Oh, no, I didn't even watch it. I didn't even watch it. Man. Just the parts that you played and what you said, it was just perfect for me. Yeah. I don't even deal with that Obsidian dude.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, I've
Yes,
been in
sir.
this space since 2008, and I want to go back to something real quick.
Mm-hmm.
When Obsidian first started on Blog Talk Radio, he used to bring these white nationalists on his channel. And the ironic thing is, on his Blog Talk Radio, that's where me and Angry Man met. Okay. So when me and Angry Man became, you know, we got down with each other, that's where I met him, on that channel. And me and Angry Man both stopped rocking with Obsidian because of the white nationalism, and now look at Angry Man.
He used to write for a magazine or a blog platform. It's called A Voice for Men. Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, this whole Pearly things, man. You remember the last time I was on?
Oh, please don't mention her name on here, man. That stuff is, you know, radioactive right now. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, you remember the last time I was on and I said that, you know, the Black manosphere is not a monolith, and you have your spaces, you have your conservatives, and I would say that the Black manosphere is full of mostly conservatives like that. And this is kind of disheartening me, but I can't say that I'm surprised, because I at some point it was going to come to this, where it's going to be now pretty much a delineation between the hard conservatives of the space and those who are not of that ilk, right? And this is hard for me because I genuinely like the space. I genuinely have a lot of love for the space, because a lot of things that are said in the spaces actually need to be said. They just do. They just need to be said for the community itself. But what has transpired over the last couple of days, I can't support it. I can't support what's been the young lady that you spoke of. You don't want to be this
Anglo-Saxon,
the Caucasian that you the Anglo-Saxon Caucasian,
yeah, crazy
Norseman, however you want to call her. I had a real hard feeling that it would end up this way, because you can't spew that type of rhetoric and at some point not mess up.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, her job is to repeat what other people say, and when you get her out there to try to say something on her own, she's gonna mess up.
Well, look, and I said this on Obsidians and other people, and actually I went back and forth with some people, including Mr. Fantastic there. She was absolutely wrong. That was it was racist, and I said, and I agree with O'Shea, that she owed the Black community an apology. Because when you say stuff like this, if you know, when you say something negative like this against the Jews or any other community, they're going to demand their pound of flesh of apology.
But you know why Perfect Blackness, right? You know why it's like that.
Because they respect themselves.
No, they're organized. The Anti-Defamation League, Jewish Voices for Peace.
They're organized.
there's multiple organizations that will get involved and destroy whatever you're trying to do. They'll make sure that, you know, either you pay up or they'll destroy whatever you have.
Destroy your life.
This is why Nina Turner had her whole campaign sabotaged by them. Okay, she spoke out and said that she stands with Palestinians. That was it for her. That was the end of it.
Yep.
Never got back to Congress.
And the Jewish community, they have their conservative and liberal leanings, but when it comes to them as a people, oh no, you can't speak against them.
They're on code, but you can't get,
even if you're right, even if you are even if you're factually correct, your criticism, you still can't do it without getting canceled in some way. That's
but
how.
You know what? But you know something? That all stems from some level of self-respect.
That's the reason why
you have to. I don't understand for the life of me how somebody does not care about their lineage. To me, that to me is a dysfunction that is observable. You know what I mean? That everybody can see. You know, it's kind of like I'll joke all the time talking about Donald Sterling is a prophet. I was like, he's a prophet. He came to us to tell us the truth. When he sat there as a white Jewish billionaire and said that black people do not care about black people, that's an observation.
Yeah.
He sat there in an interview where he was supposed to be cleaning up with Anderson Cooper. You can look this up on YouTube.
Yep.
This is when he was trying to redeem himself and apologize, right? He couldn't even help himself then. He said, us Jews, we have a company and we just give each other, we loan each other money with no interest because we know it's coming back to us. And he said that because he was talking about how black people don't take care of black people. This is how the other groups feel about us because it's observable. It's observable. We don't even care about shit that pertains directly to us. We rather perform. I don't know who this panel. I don't know who they're performing for. They're cooning when Master's not even around.
They're performing cunnilingus, man, with the exception of Jessica X. They're performing cunnilingus on her, man.
And I felt bad. I did. I felt bad. I kind of felt bad for her.
Yeah. She got her legs propped up on their shoulders and enjoying it, man. And going around the manosphere and because you don't have to be on the panel. She doesn't have to be on the panel. It's these guys who regurgitate her name, her likeness, her brand on every single live stream they get on, every panel they get on, you know, this person's name. And it's not just her, there's other women and people that they keep mentioning in the space that's not in the space that ends up in the Black Manosphere algorithm. And so now when you wake up in the morning, like I did, all of a sudden I got like 50 different recommendations for this person that I'm not even subscribed to. And I have, you know, the Black Brain Trust has no remote connection to. We have no relationship with this person, but they're suddenly in our feed primarily because these guys use her name, you know, so many times in a single cycle. What happens is the algorithm picks all of this up and they put quotations around it. It becomes a mention and it gets mentioned multiple times. And that becomes a part of the algorithm. So now she is synonymous with the Black Manosphere. These guys don't even understand this. Yeah. And so they're pushing this as if, oh man, I'm just want to chime in, man. I just want to, you know, I'll pass the mic. No, it don't work that way, man. She shouldn't even be a part of the space. I mean, yesterday, I'm not going to mention the content creator's name. You know, well, I shouldn't even say yesterday. It was actually a few hours ago. This guy stood up here and said, you know, she's going to advance the Black boys' agenda.
Oh,
make it make sense, man.
What?
Oh yeah. My God.
Who said? I didn't hear
What?
that.
Oh my God. Yeah, I heard that and I almost broke my microphone. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that. That sounds nuts.
I didn't hear that, but in the face of what she said, he said that.
Yeah.
Yo, man, a lot of guys liquidated all of their credibility just for this person on screen. This for an Anglo-Saxon person, man. All of that for an Anglo-Saxon person.
Hey, Mike, you know what this is really about with her, bro? It's just that they want to use her against Black women. They want to lose Miss Ann against Black women. That's what it's really about. It's one
you think
thing,
so, Jason?
I think so. I think so too.
But why bring Black women back to the table What's the point of bringing black women back to the table if you're going to line yourself up with somebody like her? What's the point?
I don't think their goal is to bring black women back to the table. It's just to fight with them, get you backs.
What, like getting noogies or something? I don't get it.
No, like no, like get you like, oh, you were talking bad about me. Well, now I got something to talk bad to you. You know, like I got my own bully to bully you type shit.
Well, see, and you know, and that's the get black. You know, there are many men within the space who genuinely want to get black women back in line, and then you have your other ones who would use, and it's become crystal clear to me, especially as of late, it's become crystal clear to me that they would use a woman like that just to beat black women over the head. Now, I've been very harsh and direct in my tone in terms of black women, and I really don't have a lot of apologies for it either, because the black community is where it's at, and it is what it is. But I do see that there's a clear difference between some in the space and others. Some in the spaces, they bringing black women back to the table has never really been a goal. And some that is just, well, we just want to just beat them up anyway because I got, my mama, made my life hard, and that's just it. And I want to make them all pay.
Well, according to some of these content creators, this person at the top center of the screen, and that's exactly going to advance the agenda for this person on screen.
And that's the unfortunate thing. They're using her for that. And she doesn't care because she doesn't give a damn. You know, it didn't surprise me so much of what she said, because she's talking to another white person. I mean, go figure that she said that what she said in front of another white person. Well, they talk that type of talk every day around their dinner table. It's just unfortunate she forgot that she was live.
Yeah, she's a chameleon. She was sitting across from the guy. She was mirroring him. That's what they were talking their stuff. Oops, the camera's on.
So, she's as much as a willing tool as some of the guys that's in the space is willing to use her. But it's too many of them, and the disheartening thing to me is it's hard for me to wrap my head around. Well, logically it's not, but it's just it's hard for me to. It appears that some of these guys really do cherish the Becky coming to their beck and call, and that's a disheartening thing. After all of these decades, after all of these generations, we still can't get past this.
Well, Jay Sean made a comment,
and that's a problem.
Jay Sean made a comment the other day in reference this person to the Woman King, and a lot of guys were, they were kind of butthurt by this. Oh man, how can you say that, man?
The white woman king. Go ahead.
The white woman king. The white woman king, right?
I didn't want to see that movie. Thank God I didn't see that movie.
Oh, the movie's excellent. If you haven't seen it, it's actually an excellent movie.
And I don't want to see it. I don't want to. Yeah. I'm not going to subject myself to that.
Nah, that's an excellent movie. It's a movie about a story about history. So they're not telling 100% of this. They're talking about a certain segment.
They have been very free and loose with the history, but I guess it's another discussion.
A lot of historians haven't discarded that. So what I'm saying here is, if you haven't seen it, then you're kind of missing out on the point that Jay Sean is actually making. But the thing here is, when I first came into Manosphere, I remember one time Sergeant Willie Pete had a Anglo-Saxon woman on one of his videos, and the whole Manosphere erupted, and they, he took the video down. They chastised him and basically scorned him for what he did with this woman on. I'm not going to repeat what she did to him and what he had her saying and what he had her doing. But they exonerated this guy, basically made him take the video down and, you know, backtrack on everything he did. That's the sort of governance that was in the manosphere back then. Today, you don't have that. Okay. Mm-hmm. You don't have that in the manosphere. You don't have guys course correcting and, you know, there's no introspective. There's nothing here. Everybody is just, you know, leveraging, you know, the space for their own, you know, for their own agenda. And it's like, it doesn't lead to anything, but they'll tell you that the mission is him, this young black male here, the mission is him, but we're going to align ourselves with her to go against, you know, black women. Yeah.
Hey, Mike.
Yes, sir.
It's like Jay Shine said, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, my bad. I just totally blinked on that. Look, so there's something that's kind of bugging me, okay? And this is Jay Shine. You said it, and actually, like, you touched me, man. Like, yo, I don't know about my heritage. I don't know where I came from. I can go back to a great grandpa, and that's it. That's it.
Is he still alive?
And sadly, that is that's common within the black community. That's a sad thing, but that's common.
Hold on, let me say this real quick. Who's the oldest person still alive in your family?
I got an older brother who's 49.
I can hear you.
In my immediate family, yeah, 40.
I think he's on Bluetooth.
Oh yeah, we can't hear you, Mr. Logan.
1 second.
Okay.
No, I'm not on Bluetooth.
What happened?
You still can't hear me?
Now, what you can do is just log off and log back on. We'll continue the conversation.
Okay.
You know, Mike, that question that you asked right there, who's the oldest person in your immediate family? And sadly, I couldn't even tell you that. I could not tell you who is the oldest person in my now. That could be also to my family dynamics.
Yeah,
I moved around a lot. I wasn't really raised in my family. I was raised in foster care and all that type of stuff. But still, right. I couldn't tell you who the oldest person in my family is. I couldn't.
You know, when I was my grandmother passed away when I was 16, and me and her were very close. She's from the old South, and my grandmother used to sit me in the kitchen. My brother be in the front yard in Brooklyn. They from the South. She's from Savannah, Georgia, but they migrated north, right? Like most of our families did. And she would come out to the yard because she used to hustle at the church, cutting greens and sweet potatoes. And my brother was kind of, irresponsible. So she'll come out and she's pointing to me as always. And I have to go in the kitchen and help her prepare for church the next day. And we would sit there and watch Kung Fu flicks and talk about her grandmother. So my grandmother would give me stories about her grandmother. And the reason why I asked, do you know the oldest person in your family is because even if they're crazy, we got crazy people in our family. You know how it is. You might have to go somewhere deep in South Carolina to see them. But I will tell you to do so. And then they always have the greatest thing that was ever invented, the photo album.
Huh.
And you sit there and you look at those photos and you ingest those people's faces and their names. And you learn about the people in your family, where they come from. And then you use technology. And once you get those names and you start researching your history, I've traced my lineage through my grandmother's bloodline back to the early 1800s, which means I'm dating myself here to the late 1700s, because that's where the trail fall off. But somebody had to put that person here. Mm-hmm. Right. So my bloodline goes back, obviously back to the 1700s. Also, my grandmother's brother, R.C. Freeman, who passed away recently, he comes from the Freeman strain in the family. So I come from Lathans, Sloans, Freemans, Claytons. You know what I mean? These are my family names. So if anybody who's really in this Negro culture, you understand what I'm talking about. And you know what the Freemans are. And on that side of the family, I have great uncles who fought in the Civil War. So I learned who I am. My grandfather's grandfather fought in World War I. My grandfather was a Korean War vet. And then because of this history, I can go look at maybe not his information, but I can look at that unit's information, right? Or I
Mhm.
can look at what was going on at the camp that they were stationed at. I might not have the information on my great granddad who was in World War I, but I can look up his unit. I could see where they were stationed, what they did, and what services they were providing. Then I could sit back and listen to that music from the 1920s and put myself in their space and the shit they had to deal with. And the reason I'm saying all this, I said all that to say all this, Mr. Lucky. When you sit here and you talk about leaving the country, right? And I feel you, because there's a lot of fucking pressure being a Black man in America. I'm not putting you down. I'm just saying, put this in perspective. They were existing and going through things where there was no equality in the military. Those were the Black men who helped you get equal pay in the military, which actually transformed the workforce overall. When Truman made those decisions after World War II, during World War II and at the end of World War II, and not only getting fair pay for soldiers and integrating the military, doing the same thing with the military contractors, because we used to have riots at the docks, Blacks against whites, or you know what I mean, over work and money. This is the history of us. We're not people who just lay down and did nothing. Anybody who tells you that is a liar and a self-hater. We went through a lot of shit. And the last thing I'm gonna say is this: as you talk about leaving the country because of the pressure, imagine what kind of pressure our people were under in 1911, 1920, with there's no civil rights.
And
There's no HR.
no ability to leave.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm talking about straight up terror, businesses being burnt down, racial covenants. Matter of fact, I'm gonna drop a link in the chat room called Jim Crow to the North. It was done by the University of Minnesota. And they also have a website that shows you racial covenants in the North, because that's what was going on in the North. So you had well-to-do Blacks who were scientists, artisans, who were built, because we built our homes from scratch back then. Everybody did. They would build their homes and they would ran off their homes. They would try to move up and make upper mobile moves, and they were pushed out by whites, and then they were pushed into places called ghettos. And then this documentary also covers the first projects that were built, and they weren't built in New York City. They were built out there in Minnesota. You understand me? So it goes from racial covenants to redlining. It shows you the beeline, but it also shows you the veterans, the Black veterans who came back from World War II, who fought against racial covenants. Now you can buy a home anywhere you want to be. I'm not vacating that legacy.
I mean, believe me, I know, man. I like I said, I live around nothing but white people. I know I can buy a house anywhere.
Exactly, but that's because of people who suffered and got their houses burned down, people who got lynched, and people who got threatened, and people, you know what I mean? This is what the people went through when they went to court to fight against this kind of shit. This is the kind of shit they were going through. You see how people right now threatening, the DA over Trump. It was way worse than that back then, and there was no internet.
I'm not.
You had to. This is what our people went through, and I'm not turning my back on that. I can't.
Hey, no, dude, that's good. I'm glad you have something to fight for, that you want to fight for. I don't. I need to go find something that I want to fight for.
Teach his own.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. I mean, you can't. It's impossible that once you become knowledgeable about these things, you can't turn your back on it. You just can't. I mean, when I start digging into my lineage, it's nowhere in the world that I can turn my back on that and now look at that. And look at where me, my wife, and where my kids could be had generational wealth been allowed to be, passed down to me. Mm-hmm. That's something I cannot get out of my brain. I cannot get it out of my brain to know that both sides of my family ran off properties that they owned and businesses that they owned, thriving businesses that they owned. I can't get that out of my head. And at the same time, not being able to name, see now, Jason, you've given me something else to really dig into now. Who's the oldest person in my family, in my immediate family? And that's going to call for me to mend fences and all the other type of stuff and try to make connections with people I've never made connections with. I mean, these type of stories, my situation, my story is very common within the Black community. It's very common. It's too common, and you just don't see that within the white community or any other community for that matter.
Yeah.
Most of these people, they can go back generations just by going on their bookshelf.
Yeah.
Most
Yeah,
black people can't do that. Most black people don't even have a picture out. That's one of the things. My wife, she is always on me. Everywhere we go, we gotta take a picture, and we always gotta buy a picture and be putting the picture out all the time.
Mhm.
But when you hear Jay Sean's story about, you know, that he can go back in the pic, you understand why. But the thing is, most Black Americans can't do that. And when this young brother say that he can't go back past Oakland,
Yeah, but the thing here is, for sake of conversation, Obsidian said that, you know, he can trace his lineage back pre-Civil War, but that doesn't seem to mean anything to him, though.
yeah,
I'm gonna tell you why, real quick.
Mhm.
This is real quick. I'm gonna tell you why I don't mean anything to Mike. Because like I said before, when I came here before, when slavery ended, every pathology walked off that plantation.
yeah, it did.
Mhm.
Every coon pathology, every Sambo pathology, every bedwinch pathology, bedbug pathology,
All walked
every
off.
Uncle Tom pathology, all of it walked off the plantation too. We never dealt with it. So we're still dealing with it to this day. And I'm gonna tell you right now, there's no talking to some of these dudes.
Yeah.
They're sick. They're just wired the way they are. They are who they are. They're just, you know what I mean? Their minds just, it just is what it is. And there's no convincing them. They don't want to know the truth. They don't want to see the truth. They don't care. This is how their emotions click. And they have an affinity for white man, son, white mama. And it makes sense after 250 something years of slavery and then Jim Crow, dude, you've been beat down mentally. Some of us are going to be that way.
Hey man, it's not your job to make me feel better, right? But this isn't making me feel better. If there was a button on my desk right here, and if all I had to do was press it, and it would guarantee that this system would keep going for another dozen years or so without any issue, I wouldn't press it.
Yeah,
No.
but the thing here is everybody must bring their brick, Mr. Lucky. And so what we try to do in the Brain Trust is bring a brick to the space to help dismantle the systems of injustice that plague Black men in particular, and Black people as a whole. And I think what happened in the space is that it's been infiltrated and overrun with the insider threat. You know, these guys who have claimed this conservative label that in my time has never been used in the space. No one's ever considered themselves a conservative. That's something new. But what conservatism has turned out to be is a veil for aligning themselves with the Anglo-Saxon demographics within the West. And unfortunately, this woman has become the archetype of all of it, man. And you know, most of these guys on the panel look like their faces have you know, been dipped in like baby oil or something from putting their head between her legs. It's the most absurd thing I've ever seen in my time being in the manosphere. And I've been here for a long time, and I've never seen anything like this before. And I think a lot of guys have liquidated all of their credibility, and there's no coming back from that after this. Nobody can ever come on this panel or any other panel talking about the plight of Black boys reading at a third grade level after aligning themselves with all of this foolery. This is my closing statements, and I want to make sure we pass the mic around so that everybody can get their closing statements. It's late for Jay Sean, so Jay Sean, go first.
You know, look, I'll just say it again. If you could find the oldest person in your family, go sit with them. Go sit with them. And if you can't find them, find out who got the photo albums. I know who got the ones. When I go to New York, I'll be in New York in November, and I'm going to the Bronx to see my cousin Valerie. She got the photo albums, and I'm trying to get them out of her clutches. But get grounded in who you are and where you come from, who your people are, because it matters. When you see faces and they look like you, it changes you. Because most people on the planet, they have respect for their lineage and where they come from. And I know because of what happened to us, like, you know, Perfect Blackness was saying, you know, our situation has been broken. You know what I mean? But that don't mean you can't put it together. I have a daughter. I had to put it together. I want my daughter to be grounded. And thank God she's grounded. And by the way, Mr. Lucky, my daughter is also in the military. She's in AIT right now. So we keeping that tradition going. You know, there's nothing wrong with knowing who you are and respecting who you are. I understand in this space, they made it cool to be anti-Black. Get away from that.
Oh,
Be
I'm not
pro-Black.
anti-Black.
Yeah.
I'm more of a.
I'm not talking to you right now, Mr. Lucky.
Oh,
I'm talking
okay.
about the space. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not talking to you. I'm just saying in this space, they've made it cool to be anti-Black. You know what I mean? And
That's
you gotta
dumb.
get away from that. I don't get the chutzpah. I don't even get the zeal of talking down on your own all the time, as if these other groups don't have problems, as if there's not a drug epidemic in the dominant society that's way bigger than the crack epidemic ever was. You know what I mean? It's just this hypocrisy, rolling hypocrisy we see over and over again. But the bottom line is, let me close on this point. Find out who you are. Go find the oldest person you with. Take a trip to Alabama. Take a trip down to St. Louis. Take a trip to Louisiana. I know they might smell funny. They might talk funny, but go talk to them. Go find out where your people come from. They can tell you who their grandparents is. So if you go find a great grandparent or a grandparent, that's 2 generations removed, and then they give you additional 2 generations through story. You know what I mean? It grounds you. It feels good to know where you come from. I promise you. That's why every person that's out there that becomes an orphan always feels this affinity to go find out who their parents is. It's part of who we are as human beings.
You goddamn right about that.
You know what I mean? So it feels good. It's the same situation. It's the same sensation. If you're in an intact family, that means you have more resources at your hands. So go do it. Go do it this summer. That's all.
Perfect Blackness.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna go. Thanks, Mike, for having me up. Look, this reparations piece. This is, and I've said it a million times. This is something that it's emotional for me, because if you're a Black person that don't, and you feel that Black Americans don't deserve reparations, I strongly believe, more so now, I can be naive on this, Mike, but I strongly believe that a lot of it is born out of ignorance. You just don't have any clue of what it took for you to get here to this present point in time. Not just you as a person, but we as a people. And the goings on in the last couple of days with the space has really, really gotten me, actually, believe it or not, down, because I'm, as a person who actually wrote an article defending the space. Now, granted, that was more so on a focused topic, but still, I defended the space. I can't defend this. I can't and I won't. Because as you see, my name there, Perfect Blackness, I got that there for a reason, because I'm still out of all, even though I have some conservative positions, I'm still for the community first, regardless. I'm always going to be for the community first. I make well more, make more than enough to live out in the suburbs of Chicago, but I choose to live within the city because I care for the community, and I do everything that I can to help the community. I do my best to shop Black whenever I can, when and wherever I can. As much as I can, I don't put my money into other races of people who are within the community, who have businesses here, and who I know full well that don't like us. And I know I'm just one guy doing that. But reparations is a very, very important thing to me. And I know I probably would never be able to see it in my lifetime. But that does not mean that is not anything that we, including myself, shouldn't fight for the future generations. I mentioned before, my wife, she's from South Africa. My wife can go back almost 4 generations. I was on the phone on WhatsApp talking to her mother. They can go back almost 4 generations, and they are her grandmother lived in a part of South Africa where they don't even have running water, but they can go back generations. I can't even say that. I can barely go back to my grandfather, my grandmother. And even then, when I'm starting to ask, they don't want to be truthful with me. I had to dig up stuff on my own to find out information. That in and of itself, the very fact that you have human beings, millions of human beings running around in this nation that can't go back past their own grandparents because of this institution, that in and of itself should give you some type of sympathy that, you know what, these people, they need to be paid. They have to be paid. There is no bootstrapping that's going to fix this issue. The conditions of the Black community, we just didn't wake up one morning and find ourselves in these positions. So alpha your way through, individualism and all that, that's not going to work. Being a good citizen for you and your family, that's not going to work. For the collective, it's not going to work. We're just going to rinse, wash, and repeat the same old thing. We're good. I'm going to be a good father for my family and all that. And I'm going to have kids, and we're going to release them right into the same old world that was structurally designed against them. And I don't care what anyone says in the space. You're not going to work yourself out of that. Generationally, you're not going to do it. It's going to only come through reparations, where the descendants of slaves in this nation is going to be made whole. Not through quote unquote hard work and all that. All that stuff is good. All that stuff has its place. But when it talks about what we as a people are owed, that is what's going to turn the needle in terms of Black progress. So thanks for having me up, Mike, man.
No problem. Thank you for coming up. Mr. Lucky, closing thoughts.
Hey, thanks for muting me. It's my first time doing any of these calls, man. I thank you for having me up.
No problem.
All right, real quick, if you want to hear something kind of sad. So I know of our old photo album, right? When my mom passed, they packed up all their stuff and it ended up in a shed, and that shed got rained in, and the photo album got flooded. Now, let me give you a little example of how my family is. My little brother, he was taking care of that, so he found the photos. He tried to dry off as many of them as he could, and then he asked all of us for money so that he can get them redone. That's how my family is. So, and my oldest brother, I had to co-sign for him for a motorcycle he wanted. I know that's not the whole point, but it's like, I really don't feel any attachment here. So I do believe that reparations are owed and they should be received. I just don't think that it'll happen. I hope they do. If it was, hey, sign a petition, I'd sign it. But I don't know, man. To me, it seems like this place, it's not designed for me. It doesn't want me here. So I actually have the option to leave. I'm going to take that option. And I'm thankful that I have the option to leave, because there were plenty of us who didn't. It was either you're here or you're dead. Those are your two choices.
I wish you the.
Huh?
Nope. I was just going to say, I wish you the best of luck, man.
I thank you, and I appreciate that. Believe me, wherever I go, whatever I do, I'm gonna stay. It's gonna sound so stupid. I'm gonna stay being me. But I will endeavor to help out my brothers more when I see them, because I can't tell you that. I can't tell you the last time I gave a man $1. He was a vet. He was having he was a vet. I made sure he was a vet, and he was like, didn't have a place to stay or no money, so I was like, here's $5, but he wasn't Black, and I didn't. The whole point isn't that he wasn't Black, but next time I see a brother, I'm gonna go ahead and try to give him $1 or $2 or something.
All right.
Good luck to you, Mr. Lucky. I hope you find your peace of mind, brother.
Me too.
All right.
Yeah, Ram, I don't know who you are, but we're actually closing out. So
Right. It's right.
okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were Black Ram.
Nah.
If you got 30 seconds, closing thoughts.
I just wanted to say quickly, if you want to see what happens when you don't control your market as a group of people, this Pearly thing is a tutorial in what happens to people who don't control their own market and their own demographic. That's it.
Thank you all for coming out. Please hit the like button on the way out and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust.